To be a successful business, we all know you need to be profitable. I would be silly to say, well, profit doesn't matter, because actually it does. The whole of last year was tough, but I know that purpose for me, people outweigh profit. Did I know I was going to be a property entrepreneur? No, but my purpose drove me there. If you'd have said to me when I was at school that property was a career, I would have been like bemused, really. I want people to know that anything's reachable. If you want to go far, you have to have that drive, that vision of I can do much more, helping those that are disadvantaged, that do not tick all the boxes, and that just need somebody to go, I'm going to give you a chance. That's really hard to stick to your purpose now, given the red tape that the government have put. How do you then juggle your purpose?
Pick a couple of things that went horribly wrong, or big lessons that you've learned.
Big lessons. The first is
Welcome to another edition of the Property Funding Podcast, the podcast with tips and learnings for property developers and landlords, particularly around funding, helping them save time and money. Absolutely delighted today for this episode to be joined by Lorraine Thomas from View From My Window. Lorraine, delighted to have you. How are you keeping?
I'm very well, thank you, David. Thank you for having me. Feel quite honoured to be here.
No, we're absolutely delighted to have you. You were high up the list of guests that I wanted to have on this podcast. We have known each other for, I suppose, about 3 or 4 years now. Would that be right?
That's about right, yes. Yeah. We met down in Brighton.
Yes, that was the first time we met at it was an investor site visit from memory.
It was an investor site visit. But I feel like I've known you a lot longer because online, on the platform. So by the time you actually meet somebody, you feel like you've known them for years. So,
yeah. We would have had quite a few interactions on different sort of webinars and sort of property events online. We tended to meet there, and as you say, met in the flesh and bright. It was a beautiful. It was I think a June or July time.
It was
a
beautiful
day. Beautiful day, as I remember.
Yeah. Unlike today, which is quite cold.
Today's a bit cold. I suppose it is December as opposed to June. But yeah, no, genuinely, Lorraine, delighted to have you on. You're someone I know is hugely respected in the property industry. You do some development, you do some investment. So that's what makes you, I think, such an intriguing guest for our podcast, is that you wear both hats. So therefore you see a project, if you like, from both lenses, developer and an investor. Mm-hmm. So really looking forward to getting into that. And you obviously live in London.
I do. I live in Streatham in South London, South. London born and bred. Yeah. But tend to develop and invest around the Croydon area.
Okay. Yeah. Well, really looking forward to sort of deep diving into your property journey.
Okay.
However, as you are aware, because you let a wee secret out that you've been looking at some of our previous episodes, so you know what's coming now is our fast question round.
Okay.
So I'm going to fire some questions at you.
Right.
These need to be just like one-word answers.
Okay.
Quick fire round. Okay.
Right.
So let's just see how we get on with these.
I'm
a bit
ready.
of fun. Just helps you to relax.
Yeah.
But also helps the listeners learn a bit more about who is Lorraine Thomas.
Right.
That's what we're about. So,
okay.
Favourite food?
Thai food. Also love French food. I think French chefs, best in the world.
Okay, good. Favourite film?
Die Hard series. I can't think of Die Hard series.
Yeah, okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you sort of a Bruce Willis fan, or was it just Die Hard?
I am,
A Bruce Willis fan.
Yeah,
okay.
definitely.
Okay. Not a problem.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yeah. Your favourite country?
South Africa.
Oh, okay. Why there?
Because of the landscape. So I've travelled quite extensively. And I would say in one region, you've got the hills, you've got the sea, you've got the greenery, the landscape, the terrain of South Africa. I think it's amazing, amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Never been to South Africa. I've been to 57 countries in the world, but I've never yet been to South Africa.
Honestly,
so
I have travelled to many, and South Africa just topped it for me.
The one.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Right. Favorite sport, if you have one?
Favorite sport, swimming, definitely.
Okay.
I love to swim. Haven't done much of it recently, but yeah, swimming is my go-to relaxation enjoyment.
That's in a pool or sea swimming?
Both.
Okay.
In my fit days, I would swim 100 lengths in the morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Most days of the week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Not
means
anymore. I'd love to be able to go back to it, but yeah, swimming is just get away from it. It's just you and the water. So,
yeah. There's definitely something therapeutic about swimming.
Yes.
So I actually lived for a number of years in a place called Papua New Guinea near Australia.
Yeah.
And we worked among a tribe, an indigenous tribe,
Right.
on what was called the Sepik River.
Yeah.
That river could be a mile wide in some places.
Wow.
But how they taught their kids to swim was an adult would go like about 1.5 meters offshore.
Right.
And they would just throw the kid in.
Goodness.
And the kid would obviously scramble to get back onto land.
Yeah.
And then they keep throwing it a bit farther and a bit farther and a bit farther until it learned to swim.
Wow. Fascinating.
So, needs must.
Needs must. Absolutely.
But no, swimming's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of that's your swimming favourite sport, any sort of team sports? Anything you follow team sport wise?
I do love to watch football. Liverpool used to be my favourite team. I know. They used to be when I was growing up. My local team is probably Palace.
Right, Crystal Palace.
Yeah, because that's the local round the corner from where my sort of development patch. Yeah, that's it really.
Yeah,
I do like rounders. I have been known to play rounders, yeah.
There you are. So with football, you're definitely on my type of sport. Yeah. Rounders would be my wife Brenda's type of sport. So there we are.
Okay.
You're covering both bases there. Covering both bases. There we are.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll start getting into the more controversial ones. Okay. Apple or Android?
Oh, Apple.
Boo.
100%.
Okay, Apple. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Marmite, do you like or hate?
Oh, hate.
Hate Marmite?
Yeah. The look of it, the smell of it.
Yeah. You're probably in the larger category with that one. Dream car?
The car I currently own, Jaguar I-Pace, fully electric.
Colour?
Black.
Oh, very nice.
With a cream interior.
Ooh.
I don't. My kids are grown now, so I kind of think I can.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Why not?
They won't draw all over the seats. So yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
If you can, why not? That's a good philosophy in life sometimes, isn't it?
It's the first time ever that I've been able to have cream leather interior because, I haven't got little ones that are...
So did you try the cream leather interiors and the kids scribbled on it?
Oh,
or
yes.
You just didn't?
I have tried it.
Oh, so you've tried it?
Yeah.
And it was a bad choice.
A bad choice. Yeah, bad choice.
Oh, the joys. Yeah. The joys of kids. That's another whole podcast in its own right.
Totally.
The joys of kids.
Yeah.
Okay, favourite property type? So I don't know if it's villas, apartments, whatever.
For me, it has to be a detached house. Hallways sell houses for me. So with a massive hallway, that's the killer, rather than a kitchen or a
Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting approach to that.
Hallways sell. Thing. Yeah, hallways sell.
I'm trying to think if I ever heard that said before. I'm not sure I have.
Oh.
Hallways sell.
Yeah,
I like that. There you are. 24 years in property, and you learn something on your own podcast.
Yeah,
love it.
totally.
Love it. Okay, so if you could own one property in any location around the world, where would it be?
Jamaica. So my parents' heritage, born and bred Jamaican. I'd love to own something there. A few there, actually.
Right, okay. Is that like beachfront or what
so
type?
maybe down in St Anne's, which is beachfront, but it's also a town. It's a parish. Negril, which is a very much a holiday location. And maybe a Kingston townhouse down in the capital.
Very
Yeah.
good. Okay. Yeah. There we are. That's the quick fire round.
Oh,
so now we know a wee bit more about you. We know what sort of car you like to drive and the sport that you like. So brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get in now to a bit more in terms of the meat of the podcast, if you like. And it's just really keen to unpack a bit about your early life, because I think early life always has a big factor on even people's property journey.
Yeah,
just in terms of how they're brought up. So keen to do that, and then we'll get into a bit more about the property. So in terms of early life, just describe sort of
early
first
life.
couple of years, and anything particular in school, any key influences on your life during those formative years?
So I grew up, it was just my sister and I and my mum and dad. And we lost my mum very early on when I was 16 to cervical cancer. And it was quite sad because she knew she was ill and she didn't tell us. And then one day I just sort of burst into her bedroom, saw her there, and she'd lost so much weight. And I thought, oh, Mum, is that you? We've got to get you to hospital.
Wow.
And then she, basically by the time we'd got her to hospital, she was almost terminally ill. So it was quite sudden. So Dad was Mum and Dad for a very, very long time in our lives. So working in the city, predominantly in law firms, Dad became ill with Parkinson's and dementia.
Right.
And I gave up my job to care for him.
Wow.
I just literally said, he has been Mum and Dad for such a long time, and now was my time to give back to him. And so I did. I just said, right, that's it. You know, from this big city salary to £62.50 a week.
Wow.
I had no idea how I was going to pay my mortgage. And a little voice in my head just kept saying, it will be okay. It will be okay. And I followed the little voice, gave up my job, started to become a carer for Dad. And a few months into it, I received an email from a friend who, the email read, Dear Lorraine, I'm looking for somebody to find accommodation for young adults that are looked after by the borough. I had no experience of this, but anything to get away from my dad by now for 2 days a week. And I literally jumped at it. I responded to the email. It wasn't actually meant for me. It was meant for another Lorraine.
Wow.
So call it serendipity, call it that little voice that said it will be okay. And so I responded. So 2 days a week, I got the chance to go off and get some respite, as it were. And found out that I was actually quite good at selling into landlords, estate agents, anyone who had a property that would rent it to me. And they bought into the idea of giving a young person a roof over their head that was coming out of the care system. So I was really good at selling this idea in. And but the accommodation that they were making us jump through hoops for, because we had to put huge deposits down in case they wrecked the joint, all of that. But the accommodation was not good, David, and we thought we could do better. So off we went to Dolores and I, who's now my business partner.
Okay.
Off we went to auction and bought our first property. Made every mistake going under the book. Didn't read the special conditions properly. Were hit with heavy charges, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, auctions are not for the faint-hearted, and they're certainly not for the newbies.
No.
That's a big risk.
And so we'll probably cover this later on, but one of the things that I want to do more of is speak. And one of the subjects will be around auctions.
Yeah.
You know, how to avoid the mistakes that I made, and I've made several. And to be honest, it's so wrapped up in red tape that even today, I've gone, a few years ago, gone to auction and still made mistakes because there is so much, the devil is in the detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's the finality about it. When the hammer falls,
absolutely,
it's your property.
It's yours.
That's it.
Yeah.
End of.
And the thing is, when Dolores and I first went, we had our deposits. Dad had said, look, you've given up your job to care for me. I've got a little bit of money in the bank. Use that to help you as your half of the deposit.
Very good.
But when you do well and you make it, make sure that you look after your sister.
Fair enough.
And I thought that was a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
And Dolores already had her half because she had a very successful business.
Okay.
And so she had her half, and that's how I managed to get my half. And off we went. But what we didn't remember, for want of a better word, was that when that gavel goes down, that's ours. So we hadn't arranged our bridging. We had literally 5 weeks, I think it was, to complete. And we were like, oh, we have a deposit.
But
we can pay the auction fee, but what about the rest of it? I think we need to explore some bridging at that point.
Yeah.
Bridging wasn't even a word that came into my vocabulary.
Yeah.
So when I tell you that I have started learning this game from the ground up, literally. So then we had to scramble around thinking, bridger, well, what does that mean? Because bridging was always that sounded expensive.
Yeah, that's right. And usually is.
And usually is, if you don't know how to use it.
Yes, correct.
And so we managed to get some bridging and get us off the ground.
Right.
But scary moment, thinking, we've got to pay for this. Now, what about the rest of it?
Yeah. A huge sigh of relief when the offer accepted email came in for the
absolutely
the term. Okay, well then, in terms then of that early life leading into the property, any key influences on you? Anyone that you look back and go, what, they really helped me, they steered me in the right direction in life?
So, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking, my dad was actually really entrepreneurial. Because when they first came into this country, nobody would rent to them. And I often talk about this. No dogs, no blacks, no Irish. And my mum and dad struggled. And somebody gave them a chance. And they ended up renting a room with 2 other couples. And I paused because imagine that. You're in a room with 2 other couples, but that was the only way.
What sort of year roughly, just to try and get some context to that?
So they're Windrush generation, just after Windrush generation.
Okay.
And when I think about it, my dad then and my mum worked really, really hard to buy their own property because no one would lend to them. The bank, and I always talk about Barclays under the bed. My dad would save his money literally under the bed, and then they would do this thing called a partner, which was a way of saving together as a community. And Dad, when he bought his first property, he rented out the rooms. That was really quite entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And Maureen and I, my sister, grew up having to share our bedroom because Mum and Dad would make sure that all the other rooms in the house were rented
let out.
So they had an HMO thing going on way back then, it wouldn't have been called that.
Yeah, without all the regulation.
And without all the red tape and regulations.
Yeah.
But they had an open door policy. So it was very much people would arrive in the UK or whatever, and they had nowhere to stay. And Dad would always say, come and crash with us.
Because he'd been through the journey himself.
He'd been through that
journey. He understood what that was like to not have accommodation.
And he'd say, look, you know what? I've been there. Just come and stay with me. And that has really inspired me. So view from my window is not only about what that view looks like when you wake up, and how that changes depending on your mood, the situation you're in, but also about dreaming big. But it's about helping those that are disadvantaged, that do not tick all the boxes, and that just need somebody to go, I'm going to give you a chance.
Yeah.
The thing about it is there are challenges, and we'll probably talk about this later, but that's really hard to stick to your purpose now, given the red tape that the government has put.
Some changes.
Oh, my goodness.
Some changes.
How do you then juggle your purpose, which is about giving people a chance, to making sure that they do pass that accreditation test? They've got the references, they've got the guarantees, they've done this, or that, the inside leg has been measured. All of that, when actually that's not what you're about. So that's been really, really challenging for me. And increasingly so now with all the regulations for landlords. And I can see why many of them are just shutting up shop and saying, look, you know what?
Yeah,
I need an easier life.
Yeah, we've done this long enough. We just, you say, an easier life. Not one that requires that level of scrutiny and detail. It's just, and that, there's no doubt about that. There's many, many landlords just saying, you know what? I'm out.
Can't do this.
I'm finding something different. So the view from your window.
View from my window,
I love asking people where they come up with business names. I think it's fascinating sometimes. There was one I remember way back years ago called Jammy Joe. He was an overseas property guy in Northern Ireland. And what is Jammy Joe? And it turns out it was just an amalgamation of his 3 kids' names. So I was never guessing that one.
No, you would never guess.
So where were you when you came up with that name? I mean, did you write it down, or what was the light bulb moment when you said, I'm going to call my business that?
I think it was when I was actually looking out of the window.
Is it a home in London here?
Yeah, at home. And I'd looked out that window several times before.
Of course.
But this particular morning, I thought I could see further, much further than where I'd seen before. And I don't know whether it was because it was sunny or whether my mood was different. But I then realised if you want to go far, you have to have that drive, that vision of I can do much more. It's not just here or where I can see. I need to be where I can't see, where I'm almost dreaming what it looks like beyond that and that and that. And so the view from my window is about dreaming big, and it's not all about just how far you can see. It's beyond that. And that's what I hope to inspire people by, saying, actually, and we've heard the saying, if your dreams aren't big enough, then, if they're not scary, then they're not, if they're not scary enough, then they're not big enough. It is that kind of concept. I want people to know that anything's reachable, anything is touchable, but each day you become closer to it. But you need to surround yourself with the people that are going to get you there, because that's how you're going to get there, by surrounding yourself with people that know more about it than you, hence having a mentor, because then they can guide you and you can go a lot faster.
Absolutely. Okay.
That's probably a long-winded way of...
Okay, so early life, in terms of the end of your first employment work, you're involved in marketing.
Yes.
So what took you into marketing? What was the excitement there, or the drive into marketing?
Yeah, so marketing was the way of, well, it's about satisfying needs profitably. But it was the one job that you could do in many industries. And everybody needs marketing, and even more so now. Who knew that marketing would be a game changer? Those that do it well, those that don't. And people that say, I don't need to market because I just get referrals all the time. Well, actually, you do.
Absolutely.
It is fundamentally key. And I would say that, so my degree's in marketing, and then I went on to be a CIM examiner.
Okay.
As my side hustle.
CIM standing for?
Chartered Institute of Marketing.
Good.
And so I'd mark the marketing fundamentals paper, which is like the basic level papers. But it was a good little earner, and also I could spot talent from it.
Yeah.
I could spot who immediately got the question, who didn't, but even by keywords.
Yeah.
And I guess that's that kind of appetite, that thing I've got for spotting what's a good paper and what's not.
Yeah.
Has led me on to be an awards judge. And I still, even now when I'm reading awards, I'm looking for who has that little salt and pepper, that little edge.
Yeah.
Who's got that little kick in there?
I like that, a little bit of salt and pepper.
Yeah,
I like that.
So normally when you're marking something, most people that enter awards, they're great. They're good. They know they're good because they wouldn't enter, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you then got to separate those that have that little something, and you can often spot it. And I guess that's through my marketing background, if you like.
Yeah.
But also what marketing's taught me is how to interact with people.
Yes.
And people is where it's at. The journey's then not so lonely. And also you learn from different people and their experiences and etc.
Yeah,
so marketing yourself as well as marketing your service or product.
Yes, they're very much,
Very much
intertwined in that. And no matter how good a product is, you've got to tell people about it. Which in essence is what marketing is. It's telling the masses or whoever your target audience is.
Yeah.
Here's what I have. Here's the product. Here's the benefit to you.
Yeah.
And getting that information out, which is obviously a transferable skill in terms of your property business. Then, I'm guessing you're able to bring along some of that experience to then when you moved into property.
Yes, because so somebody said the other day, Lorraine, your personal brand is stronger than actually some of the stuff that you're doing. And I'm, because without it's like subconsciously personally marked. So I talk a lot about the things I'm doing, where I'm traveling to, what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, what the tables I've been sat around, the podcasts I've been invited to. That's all part of the personal brand.
Yeah.
But I strongly believe that people buy you.
Yeah.
Right. So before anything else, and if I'm to be your mentor, then you need to have confidence in who's going to be educating you, showing you, inspiring you. And that is all part of, so it's all me. There's the bricks and the mortar, but I am the kind of the face behind it. Whereas my business partner, Dolores, and the businesses that we've got together, Dolores doesn't like any of that, but she doesn't need to because she's good at one part and the finance and she's the devil is in the detail with Dolores.
Yes.
And I'm more the one that's out there talking and marketing kind of what we do and
which probably means that works as a partnership.
It really does.
But the key you mentioned there about your brand being almost bigger than your property brand, and that for 2024 and beyond is probably key. And it's key for a couple of reasons. One, people do tend to warm towards people rather than brands.
Yes.
So that's human nature.
Yeah.
But it also gives you a flexibility in your business life because if you're attached to a company and circumstances beyond control, it might be regulation, it might be, what happened with COVID or whatever the case may be. If that company ceases to exist, well then you've kind of lost that brand presence.
Exactly.
Whereas if you, as an individual, you've got a brand presence,
Yeah.
You can go from multiple different businesses. You can pivot businesses. You can, leave businesses, start new businesses.
Yeah.
Because your brand is key.
Absolutely.
Key person influence. And can I think of a second name? Daniel. He wrote the book Key Person Influence. I must have read that 10 or 12 years ago. I just cannot think of a second name right now. I can see him. I've met him a couple of times.
Yeah.
But he has that book, and I remember reading it and going,
Yeah.
wow, that makes so much sense. Build your personal brand, and then your other business interests will flow out of that, but be a key person of influence. And certainly I would describe you as that in the world of property. You only have to look at your LinkedIn profile and your different social media posts to see people interacting with you and your brand and the sort of the profile you have in the market.
Which is a wonderful thank you for saying. But I actually did it without even knowing I was doing it. Mm-hmm. And a few people said, Lorraine, your personal brand is strong. And I'm like, personal brand? Oh, yeah, that's what I used to tell the lawyers to do. I used to talk to them about that.
That was your advice to them?
Yeah, that was my advice. So when we'd go on a pitch or when we were trying to win some work, I would always say, they're going to buy you, because there are so many property lawyers out there, so many employment lawyers out there. But actually, what they are buying is you.
Yes, correct.
And who knew that I would naturally just be doing this for myself without even thinking about it?
Yeah. No, exactly, and that's just so important. So Daniel Priestley, that was his name. I just couldn't think of the second name there. So I know he's written a number of books since then.
Yes.
But have you ever come across his book? Have you read it?
I have, and he's like a household name.
Yes.
Isn't he?
Yes. I think I have it. I'd bought it. It may have been bought for me for Christmas or something. Okay. My family tend to get me either football books or business books for Christmas for many years.
Right.
And then maybe 10, 12 years later, I had a chance to go to an event that Daniel was speaking at. So I brought the book.
Did he sign?
Oh, got it signed. And then a photograph of him and me. Nice. So I have it in the book.
Right.
But yeah, that was I think the first time I can remember been awakened, if you like, to this concept of personal brand versus business brand.
Yes.
And you've just alluded to how that's obviously helped you on your journey.
And it has actually. Which is nice, because then I think people, if they've got confidence in you, then what you're selling becomes easy, because they'll then have confidence in whatever it is that you're offering is.
Yeah.
So it's
on that
positive.
One. Okay, so let's pivot more towards property then. So what was your first experience? Well, you've already alluded to the fact that you came across property through that. So having described the auction and you've described the motivation for that, so we don't need to recount that.
Yeah.
When did you think, or can you remember a time when you said, okay, this is my business going forward? I was involved in marketing, but I want property to be my career. And what was the motivator or the driver for that?
Yeah, so it's part of all intertwined, because I actually, if you'd have said to me when I was at school that property was a career, I would have been like bemused, really. Yeah. Property, a career? What do people do in property? And yet there are so many angles to it. Architects, surveyors, monitor surveyors, building control, there was so many aspects to it. I actually didn't know that my journey would be in property. And that's, again, going back to call it my faith, call it that voice, saying it will be okay. Who knew? I mean, if I was to say to you now, if I gave you the chance to find out what your life would be like by the end of it, would you take it? I would probably say, I'd quite like to, but maybe just my faith would say no, because the journey is unknown. And the opportunities, and there's power in that unknown.
Yes.
So did I know I was going to be a property entrepreneur? No. But my purpose drove me there. So I wanted to put young people into accommodation that they would then aspire perhaps one day maybe to buy themselves. It was so nice that they wanted better for themselves, and that kind of was the purpose. And then I realised the other angle of it as well, those that work 2-3 jobs and still find it hard to rent, and going back to my parents where they struggled. So my entrepreneurial journey was almost entwined, and I almost fell into it because I wanted to make a difference. But had Dad not been unwell, I'd still probably be in business development, because it's a safe bet, a pension, you know, it's a city job with a good salary. But that was not my path. So I think it chose me.
That's a good way, that's a good way of putting it.
Rather than me choosing it.
And when you have a purpose in life, and anything in life, be it sport, I love reading about elite sports people, elite business people, you know, and of course people in property. And there's something about a purpose. When someone's driven, when they have that goal, not just a goal and an aspiration, but like really, you know, it gets them up in the morning, it keeps them up late at night, and they're totally focused and driven to that goal. That's when amazing things happen. And clearly you had that desire to provide and help people who were needing that type of accommodation, and that gave you the focus to get over the bumps in the road, which undoubtedly came and you experienced.
And there are many. But I know that the purpose outweighs, for me, people outweigh profit. And to be a successful business, we all know you need to be profitable. And I would be silly to say, well, profit doesn't matter, because actually it does. The whole of last year was tough, particularly when those interest rates, you know, I couldn't put those up on my tenants. So we had to almost carry that burden. When we were switching, you know, a lot of them were coming to the end of their term. We had to carry that. But that's fine, because also what you know in property is that it's a cycle. So what goes around comes back around. So there will be, like, I could call last year almost like a lost leader.
Yes, I know what you mean.
But I know that it will come back again. And it may not come back in the same low rates that we had before, but it will stabilise, and hopefully we're progressing towards that now. And there's so many factors in that. So many factors in it.
Which is, I suppose, in one way why there is an opportunity. Because as factors change, the circumstances change, the opportunities change, and people's appetite to risk reward, you know, is different. And therefore within that churn or that flux, you know, some people get tired and move out. They don't like the change. Others then are positioned to take advantage of change.
And the thing is, those that move out, that creates opportunity for others, right?
Correct.
But also there is that cycle. I mean, I've got an earn, learn and own program, which is where people that can't buy on their own, they pull together, and this is around regulatory tape, because I know that you're big on that, David.
Of course.
And so they pulled together, and the property that we bought, say 3 years ago, we wanted planning permission. We couldn't get planning permission. We had to go to appeal. And then we lost the appeal, and I said, no, we're going to go again. And we went again until we got the planning permission. Got the planning permission 3 years later, but now can't afford to build it out because of the... So it's a real, you know, the price of materials, the economy has changed, the landscape has changed to what was 3 years ago. Had we got planning permission then, we would have been plain sailing. You know, converted that big house into 2 flats, and we'd have been off. But now we're going to have to put it on the market as one big family home, because so there are lessons learned, and not everything, not all that glitters is gold. And sometimes I would say you win some, you lose some.
Yes, no, that's the property journey, isn't it? That's definitely. I would say if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Everyone would do it.
So the fact is that you've got to have a certain degree of fortitude, a certain degree of a a tough neck. To be able to deal with some of the things that come your way, So, I know you mentioned the auction, but give me some examples of other projects that you've done as a developer, and then we'll move over to the investor side. So, as a developer, give me some projects that you've done.
So, I'll tell you about our first ever development, which I came across some garages, and I had no idea that. Well, I didn't know what planning and development was. And so coming across these garages, I didn't realise that I could knock them down and then create our first 9 units. And so Dolores and I went off, we got some property education, and then learned that this is for the big boys, actually, because development is very different to going to auction and just buying a house and converting it, or, and so this was a very big move. And again, we learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes. So by the time we came to do our second, we learnt from those mistakes. And
can you give me an example of some of those mistakes?
So some of the mistakes is the ground. £90,000 mistake. So we didn't test the ground, and it was a bomb site back in the war.
A literal bomb site.
A literal bomb site, and so these garages were built on this bomb site. The ground was not fit for it needed work. How would we have known that? And it wasn't until we're into it that they then start testing the ground, etc., etc., etc. Our lender has already lent to us on the basis that the development funding is going to be X. Now you're going to need another 90k. Well, there's room in your deal for this. We can do it. But this is going to, the numbers then have to change. The security then changes.
Everything changes.
Everything changes. Yeah. So that's a massive mistake on our part. Would we be doing that again? Hell no, because we know now. But also, I think in property, you've got to be a little bit ballsy as well, because we was told we could only build 6 units. And I was saying, well, the mayor's saying, no, build up. We need accommodation. We've got 9. And so things like that, you've got to be a little bit, what should I say? Not risk averse, but you've got to be a little bit, I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
You've got to have a bit of guts and grit about you.
Yeah.
And also, I think the key is having the right team around you. We didn't have a quantity surveyor on our team.
Okay.
And so we had an administrator, and we had an architect who was playing the same role, but we didn't have somebody who was actually working for us on our side. So when they were signing off the payments, there was no one really looking at them going, they haven't done that bit, And so it's essentially having the right team, particularly with development. Because the numbers can change, and they're big numbers, so you're dealing in big numbers.
Yeah, so one change could make a project that's profitable become fall below the waterline.
Yeah.
Just with one change.
Just with one change.
Yeah.
And also, particularly with development finance, you've got other people that you've got to answer to. And if the lender starts to lose confidence, they can foreclose.
Yes.
And so you might have to change and go with somebody else who's happy to take that risk on that has just come out. So that's probably why it's the top of the game in property, building out. loads of mistakes.
Yeah. So you mentioned finance there, so it's probably a good time to
talk about finance. Yeah.
Unravel that a bit. So, can you remember just the high level figures on that deal you're talking about?
Oh, goodness.
As in just roughly purchase price.
So I remember the purchase price. So we needed to a deposit of about 500,000.
Okay, deposit 500.
Yes, I remember the build cost being 1.1.
Okay.
And the GDV being around 3.2. Those were the high level figures.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
So there was money in there. But then you've got the finance fees.
Yeah. So how did
the professional fees?
How did you go about then tackling that? You say as a deposit, was that money that you sourced?
So that was from an auction purchase. So we sold, because I'm a strong believer in holding.
Okay.
I like to hold, but we sold to get that money as the deposit.
Okay. And that so you
helped.
You and your business partner at this stage?
Business partner, Dolores.
So you effectively created the funds of the deposit, 500,000.
Yeah.
And then went to a lender. So how did you source the lender?
The lending. Right. So first of all, we went to a broker.
Okay. And how did you know about that broker, or were you referred to them? Did you already know them?
So that was in the circle. So do you remember when I said we went off and thought we need some property education here because we're in the deep end. This is where the big boys play here. Yeah. And so within that circle, we managed to find a broker who was moving in that same education circle. But this broker said, it's going to be very, very hard because nobody's really going to lend to you because you've never done development before. Yeah, you might have gone off to auction and bought a few properties, but development is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And but luckily they did lend to us. And I guess that was because the builder that we were using, the contractor, had so much experience, and we were able to almost ride off of the back of his experience.
Good lesson for young people, but people just starting out on their property journey is, as you've mentioned, your power team. Get people in your team with that experience that you can leverage off.
Totally.
Massive when it comes to particularly lending.
Yeah, because so the lender was confident that that contractor would be able to get us through to the end because they had success. The project actually, a few years later, went a bit wrong, but that's a whole other podcast I can tell you about. And there's a whole other lessons to be learnt there around the insurances that you need in place. And the things that you need to be insured for that often, how would you know this? And I digress a little bit, but I'll just give you a quick example. So our insurance on that first block, we didn't realise that it didn't cover balconies. And when the balconies leaked, the insurers then doesn't cover balconies.
Right.
So why did we have? So we were advised to get this. Somebody got it for us. The contractor, the same contractor. Lessons learned. Something as simple as that. That if your insurance doesn't cover balconies leaking, and that's often where most developments find a problem, then you could be stuck.
Yeah. You can be sure whatever part of the property is not covered by the insurance is exactly where the problem will be.
Exactly
we call that Murphy's Law in my part of the world.
Right.
Yeah, so
totally.
Interesting. As you say, how would you know?
How would you know?
If you're just starting your property journey,
totally.
And this is where I suppose mentorship comes in and consultancy, where you can speak to people.
Because these things roll off my head now. So because I've had that experience, and it's heart-wrenching when you think we now have to fund that. And if you can't fund it, if you haven't got anything to sell or to leverage off of, how do you do that?
Yeah.
And so these little lessons, I call them little lessons, but they're big lessons.
Yeah, but yeah.
Are what mentors can offer.
Yeah.
And you need the right team and the right people around you.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely key. So in terms then of that property, thinking of your capital stack, you managed to sell a property yourselves. That gave you the deposit.
Yeah.
500,000.
Yeah.
You then had your senior debt that came in, I'm assuming, with all the build cost.
Yes.
Was there any other part of the capital stack needed, or was that enough?
That was enough.
Okay,
That took us through that, which was... it was hard to get the funding because, as I say, we had no development experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we did have was a track record that we'd been a few times to auction, so we had that at least we had property experience, but not development experience. So luckily, we could ride off the back of the contractor, but then the next time round, it becomes easier because then you've got something to show. You can demonstrate. You've
got some track record that you can then take to your lender and say, this is what I have already done.
Yeah, this is what I've done. This is what we came out of it. Everyone got paid off. It's profitable,
Yeah, so describe then the conclusion of that first deal. Did you keep it? Did you sell it on?
We sold.
You sold it on. And did you make a profit in it to cover all your costs?
We absolutely made a profit. What I would say is it taught us a lot.
Yeah.
It absolutely taught us a lot about the moving parts and working with the council and shutting off roads and all of this, the nitty gritty.
Yes. Which are often the parts of the deal, Lorraine, that cause it to go off the rails.
Oh my goodness.
So you think they're small things.
So many touch and go.
It just takes one of those small things to literally derail the train.
Totally. One example being Thames Water. And no one booking them months in advance.
Yes.
And then when it came to it, it was like, we can't sign anything because we haven't got Thames Water. So
and there's a backlog and
there's
can't
a
come out.
backlog, and then there's the utilities, and then there's the this and the, and it goes on and on and on. And as you say, all of the moving parts.
Yeah, can
one little thing can really throw you off.
Yeah.
And the council have to be on your side.
Yeah.
And work with you.
That's
as well.
Those relationships are important when it comes to councils and stakeholders.
So key, but also the lenders need to have confidence, and so we had to, just before the end, we had to refinance it to another lender who would give us time to then sell it.
Yes,
because in the whole of the project, you start off saying, I need a year and a half is going to be fine. But then you've got to sell it. So you need another 6 months to sell it and to get over the line. And so all of these things, you just wouldn't know until you're actually in it.
Yeah.
That the timelines need to be long enough to make sure that you're still profitable.
Yeah.
Because each month you're losing profit, losing more and more and more.
It's such an important part of the world of property that the expectation is, and we're all guilty of this. It's like, oh, I've done property before. I'm experienced.
Yeah.
So those things aren't going to happen to my project. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And invariably, when they do, then there are things outside your control.
Yes.
And you do your best to mitigate the risk, but the reality is the property game is unpredictable.
It is so unpredictable, and I go back to one of the programs that I'm running at the moment where this deal, who would have known that you'd take 3 years to get through planning, and then when you actually get the permission, you can't afford to build it out. Who would have known? You would never have guessed that.
Yeah. And that's a reality for today.
And it's
I was talking to a builder this morning. It's a guy who owns some property in Northern Ireland. Really, really good location, holiday destination.
Yeah.
And it's like prime real estate. And he was telling me that he had a builder come in and actually start doing some work on it.
Right.
And then the price just kept going up and up. So he stopped it, went and got another sort of builder construction to come in. And when they come back with their quotes, it was even more than the first guy. And his conversation was as simple as this: if that's your prices, that building will stay unfinished, because there just is not the margin to pay that level of construction cost. There just isn't.
Yeah. And this is real. This is actually happening.
Yeah.
And you could be the best mentor in the world, and I want the best for all of the groups, all the learn and own programs that I'm doing. I want the best for my mentees. I want them to come out and go, that was a fantastic experience and we made loads of money. Mm-hmm. But actually this deal is so hard.
Yeah.
And they've almost learned the hardest lessons on their first deal.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, that's not what I wanted for you.
Yeah.
But this is property.
This is property, absolutely. I'm kind of laughing to myself about the learn, earn, own, and saying I should have trademarked that. I should have been asking you for a royalty on the learn, earn, own slogan.
Too late.
But
no.
I suppose I borrowed off someone else as well, so there we are. So we're both in the same boat on that one. But no, I think it is so important, because I think that really does, if you like, resonate with people, particularly if they're starting their journey. Even if they've been around the block a few times. Learn, earn, own, and that you very rarely end up owning really good assets until you've learned, how to make them earn money. And you have to start at the start learning. Start earning out of the asset. And then obviously owning the asset, and that's where you arrive at wealth and financial freedom and all the good things that go with that, So that was the first project. Any projects you've done involve private investment, and how did you go about sourcing that?
Right, so private, I've always aspired to have somebody ring me up and say, Lorraine, I've got £200,000. Would you like it? Could you invest this?
And how many times it happened?
Well, not yet. It hasn't happened yet.
Exactly. Utopia and property.
Totally.
The phone rings. How much money do you want?
How much would you like?
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I'm sure this has happened for others. I'm not quite there yet. I would love that to be my end goal, that investors are throwing money at me.
Yeah.
I have had investors through mentorship. So those that want to learn and they invest small amounts, they're not small amounts, actually decent size amounts into seeing what I'm doing, and they're learning from that. But they're also earning on their money. And that's the one thing I can do, which is say, I will give you X return for your £20,000 or your £10,000 or whatever it is that you're throwing in. So my investors tend to come from mentees who are willing to and want to learn. Yeah. But they also know that it's the fastest way to grow their money.
Yes.
And also learn at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's the best of both worlds for them.
Yes, and if you can do that, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because there is the extra value. It's not just an investment.
No.
Because how do you put a price on learning?
Exactly.
That's the $1 million question.
Exactly.
So if you can earn some money as well as learn.
Totally.
I mean, what a win-win scenario for somebody.
And some of my mentees have learnt the hard way because, the deals that should have been easy, really easy, have not been. And that's actually probably the best way to learn, because when you learn that hard stuff, a bit like us going to auction, not reading the special conditions and finding out that we've got an extra £9,000 to pay because we've got all the seller's costs as well.
Yeah.
Hello, where are we going to get 9,000 from?
Yeah. Again, a game changer potentially
in the game changer
in the financials.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because then the numbers are like very different.
Yeah.
So learning the hard way. Not that you want to make so many mistakes that you constantly keep making mistakes. You've got to learn from those mistakes. Yeah.
You have to make some though. You have to make some.
You totally do. And that's why my program is about hand-holding. Yeah. Because I'm not a classroom teacher, and I don't believe that people learn as well if you're just talking to them.
Yes, I agree.
need to be literally out there in the field and seeing what happens, and seeing how builders react to certain things.
No, Absolutely. It's the reality of the ground rather than sitting in a room. It's one of the, I don't know what your view is on this, but I get very frustrated sometimes. I know there are some great companies out there in the education space, so I am not knocking broad brush education companies. There definitely are. But I just think all too often, from what I can see, there are people in companies who literally focus in almost entirely on what I call the theory.
Yes.
And it's like someone spending hundreds of thousands of pounds to learn how to swim, but they're never in a swimming pool.
I know.
It's the theory on a whiteboard.
Yeah.
It's like people are spending thousands on courses.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. You're talking to someone at a networking event, and they've done this course and lease options and they know
every single terminology going.
And then you say, "How many properties have you got?" "Oh, we haven't bought one yet. I'm buying my first one." It's like, what are you doing?
So a number of my mentees have come to me following doing
just what I've described.
As just what you've described.
Yeah.
And they now go, I need actual hand holding. I need to actually do.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't mentor any. I'm not one to say I've mentored 200 people, because I haven't, because I cherry pick who I'm going to
which is important too.
It's really important, because the relationship has to be there. And also, I only want to mentor those that are ready to go. So if you're still in that education space, then you're not for me. I'm really clear.
Yeah. No,
I need to know you are ready to go. Your money's ready to go. You are mentally ready to go.
Yeah.
And to take the risk, because it may not work out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the key.
Yeah.
I know, to be fair to say some companies, you can bring a horse to water, it doesn't mean it's going to drink. So yes, I get there's education can happen.
Yeah.
And if someone learns what they need to do, but just decide not to go and do it, that's not the company's fault that sold the education.
Yeah.
So there's a balance to be got there.
There really
But I do
is.
think too often, and that's why I like what you do, it's very much holding the hand to actually jump in the swimming pool and swim. Go and buy a property and learn. I can remember, I tell this story a lot to people, I can remember the first property that I was involved in buying in 2000.
Wow.
Because I had no interest in property until 2000.
Right.
None whatsoever. It was just never even on my radar.
Okay.
And I remember we gathered up some money
Yes.
with another sort of business colleague.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing the first property, £38,000 was this property in Belfast.
Wow.
And my biggest fear, we talked about it earlier, you were saying some things, and I was going to throw in, feel the fear and do it anyway. Mm-hmm. And I can remember sitting around a table with two other guys. One guy was putting the money in.
Yeah.
Another young fellow who was a trainee estate agent who I knew.
Yeah.
And all I could think of, if this is so good, why has someone else not bought this property?
Right.
There must be something wrong with the property. And I remember talking to some people who were experienced in property.
Yeah.
I knew one guy had 120 buy-to-let properties.
Wow.
In Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And I was saying to him, but why have you not looked at this one? And he goes, but that's not my area of Belfast. I don't go in that area.
Right.
And that hesitancy of actually spending money on the first property, thinking, hang on, this could be, as we would say in Belfast, a pig in the poke. I could lose all the money.
Yeah.
But having that, and having a mentor then, just hold your hand and say, look, I've sanitized these numbers.
Yeah.
I've had a look at the DD pack. This makes sense.
Yeah.
Have the confidence to go for it. That can be a game changer.
A total game changer. Because otherwise you're just not going to do it. You're always going to be, what if it all goes wrong? Then I've lost all my money. I've lost all my savings. I've lost, that investment. So having somebody cross-check you, hold your hand and say, actually, it might go wrong, but this is how we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
Because we've got plan B and we've got plan C.
Yeah.
So we're not just going in there with plan A. Yeah. We're covered because I know what to do if it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
Or if it's starting to go wrong.
Correct.
Because I've made those mistakes. Trust me.
Yeah.
I've made those mistakes. And that swimming analogy is absolutely key, because swimming is one of those things you can go along in a swimming pool, think that you're perfectly all right, your breathing's all right. If that water starts to then become choppy, breathing can go out everything goes out, panic sets in, everything's going wrong.
Yeah.
And it becomes a totally different ball game.
No, I agree.
I experienced this recently, actually. We were in Indonesia, and I was wondering, you can imagine Bali, the water, beautiful, everything's like paradise.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, why is no one in the water? And then we saw these red flags, these signs saying that it's the tide. It's don't swim at these times because it's.
Yes.
But we hadn't spotted that before we'd got into the water. So we got into the water, and it was like really. And my other half's not a strong swimmer. I mean, I'm not a strong swimmer. I'm just a consistent swimmer.
Yeah.
And so he is less than me, and then the waves started coming, and I thought, there's no one in here. Then we saw the red flag. Then we saw the sign.
Yeah.
Imagine if we'd have just started swimming.
Yeah.
Your breathing's all out of... And if you've got no one to handhold you...
Yeah. There mightn't have been a podcast today.
Exactly that. We might not have come back. Just having someone on your side that knows a little bit more is ahead of the game.
Yeah.
It's like being the smartest person in the room, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't want to be that.
And sometimes a newbie, if you like, if you do your first project and it's an absolute success, everything has went superb, that is actually a danger.
Yeah.
Because you go into your next one with almost a false sense of confidence, a false bravado. This is easy. I've done my course.
Yeah.
And look what I've done. And then you're likely to lose bigger. Because you haven't had some pain as you went along, So, what are some of the lessons that you've learned? Pick a couple of things that went horribly wrong, or big lessons that you've learned.
Big lessons. The first is finance. So, always have a plan B or a plan C, because you never quite know when it's all going to go wrong. So, we were at auction. We knew that we needed to put our ducks in a row. We had a bridger. I'm not going to name them. And we thought everything was fine. They pulled the rug literally 2 days before completion.
You can tell me afterwards quietly.
I'm going to tell you. And they pulled the rug 2 days before completion.
Wow.
What do you do then? And it's all because there was the accountant that I was using at the time was nowhere, disappeared off of the face of the earth, was recommended to me, but he disappeared, and they needed something from him.
Ooh, okay, and he
couldn't get,
just
and
wasn't
they
there.
said, this is not going to cross the line. And so, luckily, we could leverage off of my business partner off of a property she had within the business, and that helped us, and we were able to put the money in 2 days before. But imagine if we didn't have that plan B.
Yeah.
And so
that's a good point.
The
Plan
key
B.
is, it's not over till the fat lady sings. It's not over till that money is in your hands.
Yeah.
And lenders can put bridges, can pull at any point.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard lesson. I told you I've got some stories.
Yeah.
That's
good.
one of them.
That's what we're here for, to hear the stories. That is a big one, and one that's very difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a plan B, you could be in awful trouble.
Trouble.
Lose the property, maybe have a liability that you have to then service back to a lender. That's
everything.
Not a good position to be in.
Another thing, joint venture partnerships. So I have tried this because I'm a strong believer in pulling people together.
Yep.
Collaboration is the key currency. All of that. I don't believe in competition. Competition is healthy.
Yeah.
But the stronger word for me is collaboration. And so make sure you know who you're getting into bed with.
Yeah.
Your JV partner may not want what you want. The exit is absolutely key. If you are not aligned on how to get out of that deal, there could be problems, and I've been there. I thought I knew everything about this JV because they had been a mentee before. They now wanted to JV. All of this, when it came to it, they wanted to sell. The rest didn't.
Right.
And then in the end, we were forced to sell just to break away from the deal and just break even.
Yeah.
I don't believe in doing a project for a year and then not making any money. But we had to. It was a lesson learned. And so now I would say know who you are getting into bed with. The terms are set out. They're signed. They're sealed and delivered because people change. Things change. Circumstances change.
Yeah. No, I think you made a good point there about putting it on a business footing. Sometimes when friends get involved in businesses together, it's all well and good sitting in a house over a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
But that's the time to get the detail of the shareholder agreement or heads of terms, whatever you're using, nail it down.
Yeah.
I have the uncomfortable conversations at that point.
Yeah.
So that when the inevitable, when the likely dispute comes, you're reverting back to something that you both agreed. And like you, as you know, I've been down that journey very, very painfully with a business partner stroke fellow director that it just didn't work out and left a lot of collateral damage to developers and investors. Extremely painful. But it's also part of life, isn't it?
It's part of life. And you bounce back and, and you learn and you'd never do that again. So you come back. But I believe you come back and if you want to come back, you're going to come back stronger.
Yeah. So note to self, don't ask Lorraine to be a JV partner. No problem. Okay, well, listen, moving to a close here. So what advice would you give newbies? If I was sitting here, I've never been involved in property, I want to get into property. Let's even say I've managed to get a little bit of a nest egg gathered up. What advice would you give me?
I would say make sure that you get the right team, the right advice, because without it, that's when failure happens, because you're then at risk. You're then taking a risk because you haven't had the right advice. Get the right advice. There's nothing more important. And follow that advice because often that's what can save you. So get the right advice. Surround yourself with those that have done it, been there, and made mistakes, actually. That's what I would say. That's key.
Okay,
and go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually good advice too.
Yeah.
Because you do have to, back to this, feel the fear and do it anyway. You've got to jump in.
Yeah.
To learn to swim, you've got to jump in at some point and feel that fear.
Yeah.
Okay. Crystal ball. 5 years out. What is Lorraine Thomas doing? How is she spending her days?
Lorraine Thomas is spending probably 6 months of the year in another country, but working hard. And I would love to be able to go to my local council and say, all that money that you're spending putting people and families in rooms out of view, there are no windows, and you're housing them at a huge cost to taxpayers, and I can do this for you. Why don't you invest in me, and I can develop it for you and do a good job and get these people out of these rooms that are not fit for purpose, but at least they've got a roof over their heads. But
rooms without a view.
Rooms without a view.
I like that.
So I'd love to be working on a big project, but something that has a social aspect to it, that's helping people go from here to here, and raising the bar for people's aspirations, and it starts with that roof over your head.
Yeah.
So everything has to sort of go back to a purpose.
Yeah. No, I love that. So I'm going to give you a chance to kind of wrap up any last minute thoughts, but some of the things I've jotted down as we've talked here.
Yeah.
So people outweigh profits was one of the things you said earlier.
Yeah.
So I like that. That's really, really key.
Yeah.
Look for people that bring a bit of salt and pepper. I love that one. That's one.
Yeah.
Can I use that one myself now?
Absolutely.
I like
you
that.
Could. Yeah. That's yours.
Did you steal it from somebody else, or did you make that up?
No. I just made it up.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Look for people with a bit of salt and pepper.
Yeah.
Development is very different. You've highlighted that
Yeah.
that within the wider
The
property
spectrum.
sector.
Yeah.
Development is very, very different than other aspects of
And
buy-to-let or refurb.
Yeah, and what I would say is it's like having one baby, but then if you're going to have triplets, that's what development's like. Like it's not triple the problem; it's probably 10 times the problem. It's a lot bigger than what you believe it to be.
Yeah.
Because there are so many intricate moving parts.
Yeah.
And all of them have to be aligned.
Yeah, and there is a social media short, if ever there was one. So well done on that one.
Yeah.
You've then highlighted the importance of Plan B, which is great on that front, and then having the right people around you to give the right advice.
Oh, goodness.
That's 5 sort of takeaways I've just jotted down.
Yeah.
And that's the benefit of these podcasts, Lorraine. You know, as you say, we've known each other a number of years. You probably listened to me do a lot of webinars and things like that. But here today, I'm like, you know what? There's a couple of really good, takeaways that I can even take away from our conversation today. And I think that's the benefit of things like podcasts. People can listen in, hear your story, hear your journey, hear your successes, but also hear the mistakes you've made.
Yeah.
And hopefully be able then to take that into their property journey.
Yes.
And that's exactly why we do these podcasts. So any last minute sort of takeaways, thoughts, comments?
Last minute takeaway thoughts. Goes back to that investing in yourself as well. Mm-hmm. So making sure that as well as showing people what you're doing, also know that people are buying you. So it's really important that the two, so you're whatever that purpose is, whatever you are doing, also invest in you as well, because people are watching that. So
I think that's a really good place to end, and that is those who have gone on to succeed, particularly if their goals have been aggressive goals and lofty goals.
Yes,
they invest in themselves. As well as learning about property, it's like the theory of it. Yeah, they also invest in themselves. Be that their lifestyle, be that their work-life balance. Yeah, the spiritual side of their life, whatever their belief system is. Yeah, I think having that holistic approach is so important. But listen, absolutely fabulous. So if we might be able to just reach through our setup just about, there we are. Fantastic. Really enjoyed that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it too.
No, loads of takeaways there. And I knew, as I say, you're on the list, high up the list. And I wanted to get you here. And it's absolutely been fantastic.
Thank you, David.
Until next time.
Thank you.